right, I believe we are live. Thank you, everybody, for attending our tech talk here in the middle of this snowpocalypse, at least in the Midwestern to Eastern U.S. on January 27th here. Yeah, I appreciate everybody joining. We've had a heck of a turnout. I think there's several hundred registrants in, so thanks a lot for your time joining us this afternoon. So today's session is AVD and Windows 365 made easy with Hydra. We've got representation from both Ferroque systems as well as Login VSI. So thanks a lot for joining us today. So I'm Nick Burton. Yep. Oh yeah. Sorry,
Jeremy. Yeah, just a couple housekeeping items. Yeah. So just some important points as we kick off here. We are tracking questions, but we're going to make a point to save those till the end. Like Nick was just mentioning, registration with this webinar has been nothing short of incredible. Thank you. This really appears to be a topic that is really resonating within the EUC community right now. If we run out of the time in the presentation to address questions, we will log them. We will follow up with a communication or potentially a blog. We do have a giveaway today. Important to note, a pair of AirPods and a $100 gift card through Giftogram. The prerequisite for eligibility to that giveaway is participation in our 2 polls today. So please do not be shy. And just finally, a recording of today's webinar will be posted in YouTube and made available after the fact.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Jeremy. Sorry for stepping on you there. So I'm Nick Burton. I'm a senior sales engineer here at Login VSI. I've actually been in the EUC space for well over 10 years now. It's kind of hard to believe that. Got my hands in Citrix, was kind of my first hands-on experience with EUC. Did a lot of Horizon in the past, and nowadays I'm finding myself more and more aligned with Cloud PC and Azure Virtual Desktop. So that's what kind of a little bit about my background and what I'm doing today. Jeremy?
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Just first off, it's a real pleasure to present with you today. Hi, everyone. I'm Jeremy Ingram from Ferroque Systems. I come from a long background in Citrix and EUC. And one of the things myself and my team do more often now is translate operational maturity investment in mature VDI platforms into successful AVD and Windows 365 deployments. And I just want to say welcome to all our attendees today. Like we mentioned, the registration list is really impressive today, and I'm so glad you're here. Nick?
Yeah, so we've got quite a packed agenda for you today. We've obviously gone through our personal introductions. We'll talk a little bit about what both Ferroque and Login VSI do company-wise. Then we'll cover some of the foundational components. So just taking a step back, what is Azure Virtual Desktop? What is Windows 365 Cloud PC? And what are the differences between the two? Obviously, once you start transitioning into a public cloud model, you're going to have a lot of different costs at the end of the day. So everything from compute to storage to networking. So with that comes a lot of avenues for savings as well. So we'll be covering those different avenues and where you could save on each model, whether you're deploying AVD or Cloud PC or maybe have a mix of both. Jeremy spends a heck of a lot of time out in the field working with customers day to day from both a pre and post sales standpoint. So he's going to cover a lot of notes from the field from his own experiences with customers and enterprise environments. And then we'll introduce Hydra finally, the unified AVD and Cloud PC platform. And in fact, toward the end, we'll also do a brief demo. I'll keep the demo really quick, just show some image management and automation features that Hydra has to offer. And then finally, we'll have some time at the end, like Jeremy mentioned, to cover questions. So if you have any questions, don't be shy. I believe it's on the right-hand side of your screen. You'll be able to ask questions. Go ahead and throw those in the chat for now as questions pop into your mind. Don't feel like you have to wait until the end, and you may forget about them by that point. So feel free to flood the chat with questions, and we'll wait till the end to cover them.
Great. Yeah, so a little bit on Ferroque. Ferroque isn't just a technology integrator. We like to brand ourselves. We shoot to be masters of end user infrastructure, crafting tailored solutions that align with each customer's business objectives. as well as their operational realities. So we were founded in 2007, and primarily we operate across North America. Ferroque stands apart with field-proven depth across Citrix, AVD, Windows 365, as well as broader EUI platforms, backed by a service-centric approach that values outcomes over simply deploying products and services in environments. Trusted by leading enterprises, government agencies, and healthcare systems, Ferroque excels in secure, scalable, and efficient workspace delivery backed by long-term support, strategic advisory, and managed services tailored for hybrid work realities. If you purchased professional services previously from Citrix Consulting Services in North America, then there's a good chance that a Ferroque employee touched that project either as a consultant, an enterprise architect, or an SDM. We're famous in EUC circles for being SMEs on all things Citrix, but as true masters of end-user infrastructure, we also help users migrate workloads from mature VDI platforms into the Microsoft cloud. And we help users realize that value from existing AVD entitlements, as well as helping customers identify their correct cloud PC use cases. We occupy a unique position in end-user computing and end-user infrastructure, combining deep delivery experience with active contributions in the EUC community. And in this webinar, we're bringing that experience directly to address the challenges organizations face when migrating to AVD in Windows 365. One emerging but increasingly critical area of EUC is cloud PC management platforms. And this is a category not yet formally defined by Gartner, where Login VSI's Hydra is helping organizations operationalize and scale cloud desktops with confidence, but also efficiency. So Nick, over to you for a little bit on your team.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeremy. So for those of you that aren't familiar with Login VSI, we've been around for a while, well over a decade at this point. And we started off as a group of consultants that really wanted to know, okay, this customer purchased maybe this server model or this cluster of hardware. How many users can I actually fit on that hardware and maintain a good or comfortable user experience? And kind of meet in the middle there by not overspending on hardware, but also not under provisioning and providing a poor user experience at the end of the day. So that's really how our one of our flagship products today, Login Enterprise, got started. We've since evolved since load testing. We are a full automated testing suite for desktops, images, and applications now at this point. So we still have our load testing capabilities, but we're much more app-centric now. So you can actually record your own custom workflows that your users typically test with and actually play those back in a test and so forth. So very, very awesome technology, widely used through enterprises today when it comes to automated testing. But of course, for this particular webinar, we're focusing on Hydra, our AVD and cloud PC management platform. We really knew that there was a gap in the market last year as far as AVD and cloud PC management solutions. There's definitely a gap when it comes to managing those natively. So I think Microsoft has definitely done a good job on letting their partners handle kind of the management and orchestration of these various components. And that's where Hydra really comes into play. And that's what we'll be talking about a good chunk of this webinar. So really quick, if I'm successful in actually activating this poll here, Jeremy and I are just curious where you're at on your EUC journey today. So assume that you're going to have a little bit of a mix of physical workstations in here. If you've got any cloud PC or you've got a mix of both AVD and cloud PC, etc., go ahead and just choose those answers. I believe the poll should be popping up here momentarily, and we'll keep it open for about a minute or so before we continue on. Just curious on where everybody's at EUC wise today.
And maybe just a reminder for those who joined late, participation on these polls is a prereq to the giveaway today.
Yep. So if you want to win that gift card or, oh yeah, now they're starting to come in. Good reminder.
Nice. Nice. I don't want anybody missing out.
Yeah, and on the AVD side, that's even if you're using it natively or have some sort of third-party management layer in there too. Awesome. Interestingly enough, Yeah, I'll go ahead and hit end pull here. So interestingly enough, on-prem VDI solution was actually the #1 choice. I'm assuming that those folks are maybe looking at a cloud management solution in the future. Um, there were no 100% cloud PC answers, which is very interesting. There was a mix of both AVD and cloud PC, but a lot of good answers here. We appreciate that. Pretty well spread across the board.
Good.
So just taking a step back here, for those that are 100% on-prem today, as far as either workstations or maybe you're working with an on-prem VDI solution, you may not be totally familiar with what the difference is between Azure Virtual Desktop, aka AVD, and Cloud PC. So on the Azure Virtual Desktop side, shortened for AVD, it originally started off as WVD, so Windows Virtual Desktop, and then Microsoft kind of changed the terminology over to AVD. So like anything else in the public cloud, it really uses the traditional cloud cost model. So you have to assume whenever that virtual machine is running out there in the cloud, you're paying for it. So every instance type has some sort of hourly rate tied to it, and whenever that compute is running, you are paying Microsoft for those cloud costs. Also, you have storage and networking components as well that come along with that. So depending on if you're using maybe premium SSD storage or spinning disk, they also have kind of an hourly rate tied to those as well. So with AVD in particular, because it uses that traditional cloud cost model, there's a lot of avenues for cost optimization here. So the last thing that you want to do when it comes to an AVD deployment is just keep those things running 24/7. You're essentially more than likely you're throwing money out the window. So in the next slide here, we'll cover both AVD and Cloud PC, some different avenues that you can get into as far as cost optimization. One thing that's interesting in AVD is Microsoft introduced what's known as Windows 11 multi-session. So I think the writing's more or less on the wall, especially when it comes to public cloud and EUC for the traditional like RDS or terminal server-based multi-session. Traditionally, and that's still the case on-prem, that's the only way that you can fit multiple users onto a single host. So Microsoft introduced Windows 11 desktop multi-session. So it uses essentially the traditional desktop operating system, but you can fit more than one user on it. So you're really maximizing your density as far as your compute goes there, because chances are your user's not using 100% of the resources on that machine. So why not shove multiple users on there and get the biggest bang for your buck? Jeremy, over to you for the Cloud PC side.
Yeah, Cloud PC or Windows 365 is best thought of as a personal dedicated cloud desktop. It's predictable from both a cost and experience standpoint, and it's designed to feel like a persistent PC in the cloud and not a pooled VDI. So from the field, we see Windows 365 working best for knowledge workers who need consistent performance, users running some layer 7 apps, VPN clients or development tools, and as well as those white glove instances for executives and of course remote users. But there's an important reality that often gets underestimated, and that's that Windows 365 is an Intune first service. So success with the product assumes that number one, there's a healthy and mature Intune environment. Number two, there's strong policy configuration lifecycle discipline. And then finally, if Intune has historically been lightly used or treated as a set it and forget it service, that Windows 365 experience can be frustrating quickly, because unlike AVD, the management complexity moves upstream into Intune. And this is where Ferroque fills a real gap in design and deployments, where when customers want to adopt Windows 365, but their Intune environment isn't quite there yet, we don't say, come back later when you've remediated these items. We help you get Intune into the right operational shape, not just to enable Windows 365, but to help ensure that it remains sustainable. Thanks, Nick.
Yeah, the last thing that you want to do is misarchitect Intune up front, and then like anything else, go back and unravel it after the fact. It's not always the most fun adventure to take on. So kind of like what I alluded to on the last slide, there are various cost-saving avenues for each one of these. So you notice that the list is a little longer on the AVD side than it is the cloud PC side, and there's a reason for that. Again, AVD uses the traditional cloud compute model. So one of the most obvious avenues is when those session hosts aren't turned on, or those Windows 11 multi-session desktops, when they are not in use, turn them off or even optionally delete them. So we'll get into in a little bit. Hydra supports the ability to do both. So we can have either permanent host assigned that are just powering on, powering off, or completely deleting them. And also saving there on the storage savings as well. So speaking of storage, for the host that you have permanently allocated, one thing Hydra can do that is really cool is when those off hours, when you need to power down those resources, we can actually switch the disk type over to spinning disk, to HDD. So they are about half the cost as premium SSD disks, and they're not in use anyway. So why pay for the premium SSD storage when they're powered off in that case? And then one thing that I constantly see, and when I get involved in various pre-sales engagements and so forth, and they already have an AVD footprint, is they're not taking advantage of ephemeral disks. So they're using this dynamic auto scaling where they are actually creating and deleting machines and using them in a fully non-persistent scenario. Why not use ephemeral disks in that case? So ephemeral disks, for those of you that aren't familiar, they're relatively new, but they are free and they are local NVMe based storage. So they are actually higher performance than premium SSD. And if you are treating your AVD machines in that fully non-persistent manner, if your instance type supports it, absolutely use ephemeral disks if possible, especially if you're fully treating those as throwaway disks and you're using FS Logics, things like that for your profile storage. Take advantage of that when you can. And then I see a lot of folks kind of I would say, hit the easy button and just they go out and they deploy a bunch of personal host pools, one-to-one assignments. Take advantage of the pooled and multi-session approach. So traditionally in on-prem VDI, this was the non-persistent setup. If you were using like an MCS or PVS in Citrix, or maybe instant clones in Horizon, take advantage of that kind of architecture too. And Hydra definitely supports that as well. We can do really cool things like delete machines after the last user is logged off and really create that sort of non-persistent feel that customers might be used to in a traditional on-prem VDI deployment. And of course, select the correct instance type. So going back to Login Enterprise, this is a great use case for Login Enterprise nowadays. So you can, where traditionally we would use that set of virtual users to right size maybe an on-prem cluster or server environment, you can now use this to pick and choose the right instance type when it comes to your Azure instance. So we can actually load up that multi-session host with users and tell you exactly, using our VSI max score is what it's known as, how many users can comfortably fit on that multi-session instance before performance starts to tank. So you're not guessing, you're not just staring at resource utilization. You have real objective numbers that tell you exactly what your, all the way down to your app timers look like based on the amount of users that you've loaded onto that multi-session host. And then one of the more traditional models, especially when you're talking infrastructure out in Azure, is reserve your instances. So if you know that a certain pool has the need for maybe 24/7 access to it, so if you've got an app that users always need access to 24/7, therefore you'd have to always keep some set of session hosts powered on. So go ahead and reserve those instances. I kind of like to think of it as like a car loan. You basically pay Microsoft a little more up front, but you ultimately end up paying less in quote unquote interest long term. So you're ultimately saving money when you reserve those instances if you need that case where 24/7 access is needed. And then Jeremy, over to you for the cloud PC side.
Yeah, all those points were excellent, Nick. On the cloud PC side, when we talk about cost savings with cloud PC or Windows 365, we're not necessarily talking about any easy buttons, but we are talking about efficient alignment to users and business requirements, and really strategic ones at that. Windows 365 is intentionally predictable from a cost standpoint. You don't get the same number of optimization levers as you do with AVD, but the ones that you do have are powerful when you use them correctly. The single biggest lever is SKU and instance right sizing. From the field, we consistently see cloud PCs over provisioned. Users on a 4x16 machine, whoever only really needed a 2x8, or users that maybe had bolstered machine specs for short-term projects that were never really revisited or rationalized. Windows 365 makes provisioning easy, and that convenience often leads to an assign and forget behavior. But treating cloud PCs as lifecycle assets and not one-time assignments is critical. The second major opportunity is frontline licensing. Frontline cloud PCs are ideal for shift workers and task-based roles, yet we frequently see those users assigned full-time cloud PCs despite only using them for a few hours a day. And that's not a Windows 365 problem, it's a use case mapping problem. When frontline SKUs are applied correctly, the cost impact is often immediate and significant. And ultimately, the cost optimization with Windows 365 isn't a licensing exercise, but more an operational discipline. Thanks, Nick. So moving on to the reality gap, moving to AVD and Windows 365. Just to be clear up front, both Azure Virtual Desktop and Windows 365 are absolutely capable of delivering an excellent user experience. But where organizations often struggle isn't with the platforms themselves, it's with the operating model and the tooling required to run them at scale. Teams coming from mature environments like Citrix or Horizon often expect that they're going to get the same level of operational visibility, image lifecycle control, and troubleshooting insight out of the box. But instead, they discover that those capabilities exist, but they're often fragmented across native services or require some additional tooling. And that's the gap that Hydra fills, not by replacing AVD or Windows 365, but by complementing the control layer and completing the operational layer around those desktops. Next slide, please. Everything on this slide comes directly from the field. The first pressure point is image management. What teams expect is that same kind of deployment and maintain model where we just apply occasional updates. But what actually happens and where leading practices are taking us is regular rebuilds. Regular rebuilds, testing, and rollback discipline is becoming the norm. And in cloud desktops, that image management stops being something you do and starts to become something that you run. In terms of auto-scaling works, and it works as designed, but real environments aren't clean. And usage patterns vary by role, they vary by region, and as well as the time of day. So from the field, the question is rarely, does the auto-scaling exist, but how much customization and granular control can we put around those policies? Troubleshooting is another common gap. When users say my session feels slow, without session quality or experience, without any experience context, support teams are often left guessing which resolution. Support teams are often left guessing, which increases resolution time and frustration. Governance is the final mindset shift here. The defaults out of the box for these products can get you started, but they don't keep you efficient. So cost control and hygiene require ongoing operational ownership. And again, this is where Hydra fits very intentionally. It requires a remarkably small RBAC footprint compared with similar tools. And just as importantly, pulling levers in the Hydra console doesn't necessarily immediately translate into additional Azure consumption, which is something we routinely see with other products. And for customers running personal AVD desktops, moving to cloud PC doesn't have to mean starting over. Hydra's one-click migration built on the Microsoft Migration API removes a huge amount of friction and risk. So none of these issues here listed are blockers or deal breakers necessarily for a deployment, but they can compound and encroach on project budgets for initial deployment and require an exceptional commitment from administrators to maintain. Successful and thriving cloud desktop environments aren't only built, but they're also operated. Next slide, please. So This slide represents what we call the gray zone, the space between what AVD and Windows 365 can do natively and what's required to operate them efficiently at scale. Real-time monitoring is a good example. You can get session performance and deployment data, but it's often spread across multiple services, which makes day-to-day operations harder than they need to be. Image management is another common friction point, the native workflow. Snapshot, make changes and prep. It works, but it doesn't necessarily scale well from both an operational and a security perspective. And again, we're seeing that clear shift away from deploy and patch towards an automated redeploy with updates model. And that approach reduces configuration drift. It limits the Windows 11 threat footprint and aligns it aligns better with modern security practices, but it requires orchestration and automation to be practical. The complexity is amplified for MSPs and in M&A scenarios where teams are jumping between portals and tenants just to keep environments consistent. None of these are platform failures with Microsoft Cloud PCs, but they're a natural side effect of flexible cloud-native services. And this gray zone is exactly where Hydra is designed to sit, bridging operational gaps without replacing AVD or Windows 365. And finally, for many organizations, it's simply hard to get meaningful feedback into large platform vendors. Requests for enhancements frequently are slow, the visibility is limited, and it's easy to feel like a small fish in a big pond. And one of the things customers consistently mention about their experienced value with Hydra is the opposite. Many of the features that exist in Hydra are there because they came directly from customer interaction with the product team. And that solves real operational problems that show up before the environment goes live. And that feedback loop matters because it means that the platform evolves around how environments are actually operated, not just how they're designed on paper. Next slide, please.
Yeah, so from just an operational maturity model, especially when you talk alignment with Microsoft well-architected principles, one thing to keep in mind with Hydra in particular is we really follow model of least privilege access when it comes to the service principle. So everything that Hydra operates under as far as AVD and cloud PC automations on the Azure side, it's operating under the context of a service principle. That service principle we actually give minimal required access to. It's not just, okay, we're going to give this service principle full ownership to do whatever we want in this subscription. We actually have a custom role that aligns with, again, it's the minimal impact that service account truly needs, that service principle in order to operate within your AVD or cloud PC platform.
Yeah, building on that RBAC point, a big difference we see between environments that scale cleanly and those that don't is clean segmentation of landing zones, subscription, and workloads that operate within resource groups, and really keeping that segmentation clearly defined and respected. This matters because AVD and Windows 365 don't live in isolation. They coexist with networking, identity, security, and management tools. And when everything is blurred together, change in these environments becomes risky, the troubleshooting gets harder, and the ownership becomes unclear in many circumstances. So clean separation and alignment to Microsoft well-architected frameworks, that isn't about compliance just for the sake of compliance. It's about building environments that are secure, resilient, cost-aware, and operable for the long term. So when environments are designed this way, the operational tooling like Hydra fits naturally into the architecture instead of cutting across it. And that's what allows teams to improve visibility and automation without breaking the architectural guardrails. Operational maturity here isn't about adding more tools. It's about fitting the right tools into a disciplined architecture. Next slide, please.
So ultimately, that's where Hydra comes in. So we've kind of talked about some of the drawbacks with trying to deploy and manage AVD and cloud PC natively. So like I alluded to earlier, Microsoft leaves a lot of these gray areas, these gaps, They essentially leave it to their partners or customers to kind of develop solutions around to truly get it into that fully mature model that they might be used to, especially if coming from like an on-prem VDI platform. You lose a lot of things such as real-time visibility, image automation. One of the key things that Hydra covers, I'll get into in a little bit. Like Jeremy said earlier, more and more folks really should be going away from these manual patch cycles, treating these instances like they are completely just static and snowflakes out there. Once you deploy them, you kind of let Windows updates take over, Intune take over, and you're done with them. It really should be centralized control of an image, and that could even mean, okay, it's time for our monthly updates. Let's actually pull a brand new image from the marketplace, layer on our changes, which are called script collections. We'll get into that in a little bit during the demo section, and deploy them that way. So it's a completely automated framework with pipeline management as well. It's just like a lot of DevOps type methodologies without the complexity. So you'll see that later on once we dig into the platform. And then same thing goes for Cloud PC management. So again, not jumping between different sections of Intune, things like that, whether that comes down to assigning licenses to users to give them that Cloud PC, or maybe assigning them apps and so forth. You have that single pane of glass, especially, I mean, looking at the poll numbers, there is nobody with 100% Cloud PC deployment that's attended this webinar. If anything, there's a mix of both AVD and Cloud PC in there. So it's one single pane of glass to consistently manage both your AVD and Cloud PC environments as well. And one thing that Jeremy alluded to earlier, especially if you're an MSP, or maybe you're an enterprise going through several mergers and acquisitions, and you have to bring on an existing AVD or Cloud PC management platform. Just to be 100% clear, Hydra is multi-tenancy by default. It is built into the core product. There is not a separate product, one for managing multiple tenants, one for managing a single enterprise tenant. It is as simple as going into the tenants page and adding a service principal, tenant ID, and secret to it. And then it just appears as a group of host pools or a group of Cloud PCs in your tenant, and you can just manage all of your existing script collections and so forth within that, again, that single pane of glass. You're not having to jump into different portals and re-authenticate and all that other mess. It is one single pane of glass for everything, including your Cloud PCs as well, across all of your customers. One really cool thing about Hydra as well, we see a lot of enterprises moving toward this model is self-service. The last thing that a user wants to do when they have issues, especially if you're talking like a healthcare environment, the last thing that they have time for is to stop taking care of the patient and going in to call the help desk, just something as trivial as logging off their AVD session. Maybe their session's hung up. It's Windows at the end of the day. So as we know, nothing is necessarily perfect there. So the user can actually go into the Hydra portal themselves and self-manage their session. They could actually initiate the log off through the Hydra portal. Something that's relatively difficult to implement in an AVD or Cloud PC platform today. So a lot of self-service that Hydra has today, and our product team is doing an awesome job. Like Jeremy said, we take all of our feature requests directly from customers and end up implementing them into the product. So a lot of self-service capabilities coming over the coming months, because that's a lot of what our customer base is asking for. So just a high level, what an image build actually looks like in Hydra and how we actually automate it. So if you're using AVD today, especially native AVD, and you've gone through the imaging process, you know that it is pretty long, drawn out, and definitely needs a little work compared to, especially if you came from like an on-prem VDI platform where it was as simple as pointing to a snapshot, hitting go, and you can deploy your pool that way. If you're talking just strictly native AVD, you have to have your source VM. You have to maybe create a clone of it, because as you know, once you actually start going in and marking it as generalized in Azure, do your sys preps and so forth, it actually becomes unusable in Azure. So you can no longer build off your existing virtual machine. So Hydra actually automates this entire process for you, all the way from building the image itself, which is really cool. So we have this concept called script collections. So during this preparation phase, the second phase that you see here, we can actually run a set of actions, whether that be PowerShell scripts, or maybe we want to pull apps from the Winget repository. We can layer all of those changes into the golden VM itself during this preparation phase. So again, you have a couple options. You can either take one image and continue building on it through scripts and so forth and updates, or you can actually, what a lot of customers are doing is pulling a brand new image from the marketplace each time, running these scripts and collections and doing all of these customizations on a brand new VM every month. Because they have that framework, using Hydra, you can completely automate that process. Hydra then creates a temporary copy of that virtual machine, which is how we can continue leveraging it in the future. So when we mark it as generalized in Azure, it's still usable because we're technically marking the temporary clone, that virtual machine clone, as generalized, not the source golden VM itself. And then from there, after all the syspreps and generalizations are done, then we mark it into an image on the Azure side. We can also, of course, integrate with Azure Compute Gallery as well and import it in there. So key takeaway here is more and more customers are using our script collections and our automations to build out their images from scratch. And now you have a complete playbook or a task sequence when it comes to, maybe moving from 25H2 to 26H2. The last thing you want to do is attempt to do an in-place upgrade because you have no idea how you built your image in the first place. So you're essentially building a definition of that image build within Hydra using our script collections and the technology to get there. So it's really cool to see where customers are taking this when it comes to AVD and how they're essentially building out these playbooks for their images versus doing any sort of manual changes. So no more RDPing into your image or anything like that. It's completely automated for you.
Good slide, Nick.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So as far as the local data center goes, there's still a lot of use cases for data locality, especially when it comes to like privacy laws and things like that. There's always going to be a need for some sort of like hybrid deployment or local data center there. So we're definitely investing a lot in this space, especially around a new technology called the Hydra proxy. So what the Hydra proxy does, and the next slide I'll actually cover the architecture for it briefly, it allows for complete local image management for customers that are using Azure Local today. So traditionally, every time you wanted to create a new image, that virtual machine actually had to be out in Azure Cloud. It could not be local because of some limitations on where it could point to the basically the golden VM. So what the Hydra proxy does is actually provide that bridge, that resource bridge, so it can actually see local VMs and convert those into images purely local on the hosts. So there's no more having to fetch all of that data from Azure Cloud, bring it down onto your Azure Local instance and your local storage. And so this greatly streamlines deployments for folks that are using Azure Local today. So Hydra Proxy right now, it's in public preview. You can actually go out and download it. It's included with the GA version of Hydra today, and we are working toward getting it GA. So if you have Azure Local, definitely something to check out and try and see if it resolves a lot of your image pains that you might have today, especially if you're using GPU and you're having to layer in some sort of graphics driver there. There's been a lot of complaints about that, especially. For those of you that have not heard about AVD on Hybrid yet, what that does is it actually uses Azure Arc to manage those AVD instances on essentially in a bring your own hypervisor scenario. So this was announced at Ignite 2025 this previous year. And so, like I said, I mean, you can be a customer using Nutanix, using VMware, using Hyper-V. Any hypervisor that Microsoft supports in this scenario, you'll be able to actually run your Azure Virtual Desktop workloads on, which is really cool. So Login VSI is an early adopter, an early partner of this, and we are co-developing this with Microsoft to build it into our product. So day one, when Microsoft goes live with this, Hydra will be completely ready to take this use case on for folks that want to go that route and kind of bring their own hypervisor, which is really cool. The key thing here is, again, Microsoft is relying a lot on their partners to provide like the orchestration components. So it's essentially like, yeah, we'll give you the VDA, we'll give you the agent, but it's up to you to actually deploy these desktops to get it on. And so that's where Hydra, the Hydra proxy in particular, is really going to come into play.
Yeah, we've been talking. Just one point to add there. I mean, we've been talking about cloud heavily, but yeah, let's not forget the on-prem, and let's bring it down and spread a little fog here. But the local data center is still key in the overall architecture, especially for ensuring the same or better experience after your migration is completed. So proximity of those hosted applications to their backend matters. Routinely, we see customers migrating workloads to the cloud, prioritize lifting their apps into the cloud, but deprioritizing lifting application backends. And lifting services like SQL into Azure are expensive, but throwing an express route at an application delivery scenario never performs as well as customers think or hope it will, especially for legacy chatty applications. So for many organizations, this isn't about resisting the cloud. It's about addressing latency, data residency, and regulatory requirements, or existing investments that can't be unwound overnight. And that's where the Hydra proxy really plays a key role here, allowing customers to maintain that local image management while still adopting that modern cloud-aligned operational model that reduces friction for hybrid deployments and avoids forcing artificial architectural compromises. So with Microsoft's announcement of AVD for hybrid environments, this becomes even more relevant. Customers can still bring their own hypervisor and extend the Azure Virtual Desktop into their on-prem environments. And Login VSI's close partnership with Microsoft means that Hydra is being designed alongside that evolution, not bolted onto it after the fact. So the key takeaway is that the hybrid isn't a detour for many organizations. It's the most realistic path forward. And just based on some of the feedback we got in our poll, we may be preaching to the choir in a lot of instances there, which is good to see.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and just from an architecture standpoint, I mean, you could tell this follows a pretty traditional, where you have your control and orchestration layer in the cloud, and then you deploy essentially, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeremy, this is kind of like a cloud connector type deployment, where you have your on-prem control layer up in the cloud, but then you need that local piece to bridge that resource gap there to communicate with all your local resources. And that's essentially the role that the Hydra proxy plays here.
Excellent.
So what have we been up to in the last few months, and where are we going in terms of Hydra? So a lot of exciting stuff has happened just in these last few months. So we've done some additional rollout methodologies, such as being able to selectively replace host, again, going back to that session host lifecycle management, making that much more easier and streamlined for you. We can also now, originally Hydra had to operate off of what we kind of call a brownfield environment. So you already had to have a foundational AVD layer there, at least to where your host pools and workspaces and things like that existed. Now we can operate on a completely greenfield environment. So Hydra actually now has the ability to create host pools, to create workspaces and app assignment groups. So you could do that all within Hydra today. Again, the vision is to get more and more to that single unified portal. So you're not having to jump over to Intune or jump into the Azure, the native Azure control plane. You could do it all via the Hydra portal, and that's the vision that we're trying to really push here. And then, of course, we added recently Windows 365 Cloud PC. So more and more features. I'd expect every single release will have more features around Cloud PC and value add there, especially things that you might not be able to do natively with Intune in the Intune portal today. We're going to make available in Hydra over the coming months. So a lot of exciting things there. And of course, I glossed over it there, but more and more Azure local enhancements as well. So mainly it's about image optimizations and efficiencies. So not having to pull that image from the cloud. We expect more and more features to come out around Azure Local and the Azure Proxy, Hydra Proxy toward the coming months here. So that's one thing that we're working on, is getting that Hydra Proxy into GA. So right now, like I said, it's in public preview, but as more and more customers are using it, giving us feedback, again, if you're using Azure Local, I highly suggest that you try it out. See if it solves those pain points from an image management standpoint. One thing I did, QR code on the right, if you go into Chrome and you create a QR code, it creates a dinosaur in the middle, and I decided to be cute and add a couple heads to it to make it a Hydra. But you can scan that QR code there. It'll take you to the Microsoft announcement where they actually called out Login VSI as a supporting partner from a co-development standpoint for AVD on hybrid. So really cool announcement there that was done at Ignite if you have not heard about it yet. And of course, more and more, like I said, more and more cloud PC. So we'll have some provisioning enhancements as well as some more reporting capabilities over the coming releases. And one thing that we love is our Hydra agent. So our Hydra agent is it's basically a real-time data collector. So it's a lightweight agent that sits on your cloud PC or your AVD session host. And it stores all of that data within the web app service of Hydra. So you're not having to offload that to like a SQL database or something like that. It is 100% real time. And we're not, like I said, we're not shuffling that data over to some external data repository that you have to spend more Azure cost for. It essentially comes with the product. So we'll be pumping more and more capabilities there as well. And one thing that Jeremy alluded to earlier, all of these features are 100% customer driven. So if you're using Hydra today or you start a Hydra trial after this webinar and there's something that you may not like or you want added to the product, please let us know. Because like I said, we don't just come up with these features and enhancements out of the blue. These are 100% driven by what our customer base asked for. So we take that feedback very seriously, and chances are if you have some sort of feedback, it will end up getting implemented into the product.
I think one other point to bring up there, one thing that resonates with me anyway is especially on this slide is why the pace of change in Hydra looks the way it does, or the velocity that we're seeing here isn't driven by a theoretical roadmap. It's driven by what shows up in customer environments after go live. So most of the features added over the last few releases came from operational friction points. That could be around rollout time, that could be around image lifecycle, that could be multi-tenant complexity or reporting gaps. But looking ahead over the next 6 months, that same feedback loop continues. And as customers scale AVD in Windows 365 environments and those new challenges emerge around hybrid support and cloud PC operations and agent level insights, all those challenges will directly shape what goes into future releases. And this is also why the feature cadence feels practical rather than experimental. Enhancements are focused on day 2 operations, not just initial deployments, and they're validated in real environments before they land broadly. So that's what we mean when we say Hydra is customer driven, not just in principle, but in practice.
Yeah, definitely some good wisdom there, and appreciate that, Jeremy. And yeah, don't just take it from Jeremy and I. I mean, these are reviews, just a small handful that I pulled straight out of the marketplace from customers that are using Hydra on a day-to-day basis to manage their AVD and cloud PC management platform. I mean, you could see a lot of people don't know how long Hydra's been around before Login VSI acquired it. It's actually been around for many years now. So you could see one of the customers there. They've been using it with AVD for over 3 years now, and yeah, a lot of good things to say, and we appreciate all the time that these customers took to provide this kind of feedback out on the Azure marketplace. Definitely appreciate it from our side. And then I'll share the QR code in a bit, actually, if you're interested in trying it out yourself. We'll have a slide here in the coming minutes to go out and find it on the marketplace. You can usually Google it as well. Just search for Hydra for AVD and it'll come up. But until then, let's do a super quick demo. I'm going to fly through this. It'll be the fastest demo I've probably ever done. I try to get it done in about 60 seconds here. So let me see if I can. Window. Chrome, share. Let's see if this actually works. There we go. All right. So this is the Hydra web portal. So shortly after you deploy it, you can see all of your host pools here. These are, if I just dive right into my host pool, I can see kind of my overall sessions, the capacity over the last several days. One thing that I also see here that we love is the Hydra agent utilization statistics. So these are real time. Like I said earlier, this is a lightweight agent that actually gets installed on the session host. This gives you, especially if you're a traditional on-prem VDI customer, maybe using Citrix or Omnissa, this really gives you like a Citrix Director or an Omnissa Horizon kind of help desk style feel to it. So I can come in, I can view all the different processes that my users are running. I can see the last hour as far as system resource utilization goes. And I can even dive into specific user sessions. Say a user's calling in, they're complaining that their session's slow. Not only can I look at the system resource utilization, I can also look at the user's like round trip time, a lot of good RDP statistics in here as well. So really accelerating your help desk troubleshooting standpoint. One thing that I wanted to cover really quick are script collections. So like I said, you can actually build entire playbooks or task sequences, whether that be initial image builds or continuous updates. So if I just dive into this, one thing that we don't just cover in script collections are we don't just cover scripts, we cover all these other actions as well. One thing I can actually do is integrate with the Winget repository and install Winget apps that are part of Microsoft Package Manager. So I can just simply come in here, choose which apps that I want to install during the image deployment process. And then on the actual image creation itself, it's as simple as coming in here, choosing any virtual machine that's AVD compatible. I can also run that script collection as part of my image build process. So if I just hit create image, it will create a copy of that virtual machine I'm pointing to. It will run the script collection actually on the Golden VM itself before it starts that cloning process, and it does all the syspreps, the generalization, all that automatically. So I'm not having to do any of that manually like I had to do in the native AVD days. So super streamlined and straightforward there. And let me jump back to the slides. Told you that'd be the quickest demo ever there, Jeremy.
Not bad. Daring.
So here's the QR code that actually takes you to the Azure Marketplace. So go give it a try. It's fully featured for 30 days. And then after that, it's followed by a community edition. So this is great for lab environments or maybe extended proof of concepts, or maybe you're just getting your hands into AVD. Community edition is still fully featured. It just limits you to a single tenant, 5 hosts per host pool, 5 host pools, and 100 sessions. So even if you have a small AVD footprint, this is still a great tool to use and take advantage of. So I'll leave that here for another few seconds until we get into questions, and I'm going to start reading those questions now. So Gabriel asked, Hydra pricing compared to Nerdio. So one thing that's really unique about Hydra pricing in particular is we price off of concurrent usage. So we don't care if you have 10,000 users, named users that are accessing your AVD environment. If you only have a max concurrency of say 1,000, our list price is $5 per max concurrent user per month. So even if you had 10,000 named users, but only 1,000 users actively logged into it at any time, you'd only have to pay for that 1,000 count. So it's really advantageous from a licensing perspective as well, and that's list price. So you start talking annual contracts and things like that. You can go to Login VSI's website and check out the Hydra pricing. It's all out there. We also offer annual contracts for price advantages and additional support models and things like that.
To be fair, though, there's additional costs that should be considered there, and when Nick and I were putting this webinar together, we really wanted to try and hit on that too. But there's cost for RBAC implementation. The required RBAC scope to implement Hydra over Nerdio is much narrower. So an administration cost to consider. Additionally, what else did we talk about? We talked about pulling levers. And I mentioned that pulling levers in Hydra doesn't necessarily automatically result in higher Azure consumption costs, where it might in other platforms. That's an important cost to kind of consider there as well. So there's a lot of efficiencies, not just from the initial commitment into the product. Definitely,
yeah, good call out there. And that's one thing I wanted to stress when I was talking on the Hydra agent. That is That is real time. It's just stored in the memory of the web app itself. So we're not offloading that to a SQL database or a log analytics workspace or something like that. So definitely good call out there, Jeremy. And your colleague Richard here actually asked about multi-tenancy. So if that includes RBAC and if you can control which areas of the console different members can view. Yes. So one thing, and we can have a follow-up with you, Richard, if you want to kind of walk through the product. We can not only control down to what tenant a specific admin has access to, but also all the way down to the specific host pool. So if you have different business units that you maybe want to give certain levels of access to some host pools versus others, you can also do it all the way down to the host pool level as well. Of course, you can do it either tenant-wide or globally too, like you said. So good question there. Sebastian asked about GPOs on non-persistent VMs like you have WIM on Citrix. So great question, Sebastian. So right now, what I've actually got a little tool in my automation repository to take existing GPOs and actually export them out to raw registry keys and PowerShell scripts that you can then use to layer in that host pool config and that task sequence. So that's what I do today. In the future, I believe it's on the roadmap. We may have the functionality to even import like ADMX templates to apply additional settings to your host pool. We already have several configurations out of the box. It's in the host tab on the host pool configuration. But if you're wanting to do like custom ADMX templates and things like that, that'll be in the future. Today, you could just do those via registry keys. It's the easiest way to do that. Paul asks, how can login VSI's continuous testing help validate the impact of Windows updates, app patches, image changes before they reach production AVD users? So one thing that was, yeah, that is a good question. So Paul, one thing that's, I don't know if you happen to see that host pool utilization when I was showing the demo earlier. Fun fact, that is actually being driven by a Login Enterprise continuous test. So we make the lab look a little more realistic by taking a set of virtual users and actually having them constantly log into that Azure Virtual Desktop pool and do real work. So that's one thing that a lot of customers are using from an image validation standpoint. They have a staging pool, and they have virtual users constantly logging into that staging pool, going through the real workflows that their production end users are doing. So if anything is maybe we exceed a timing threshold, so our performance starts to tank, or maybe something just breaks functionally altogether, we can alert and let you know before you send that image change into production as well. So overhead created on Hydra itself, I think, is what Lawrence is asking. Usually just Azure cost alone from a Hydra deployment standpoint, if you're just talking the infrastructure, so the web app, the SQL database, et cetera, that usually runs our customers anywhere between $100 to $200 a month just for the infrastructure that gets deployed alone.
And we can walk through, we can walk through some models as well with respect to kind of measuring your workload and seeing where the Windows 365 kind of scenarios really start to become economical. So I guess there's that too.
Yep, definitely. From other good question on if users from other intra ID tenants where Hydra is deployed for self-service. Great question, Mike. Right now, you would add that user as a guest user. So if, say, you're an MSP tenant and you have it deployed centrally, you would actually invite that user as a guest into your tenant, and they can log into the Hydra portal that way. I would say we've got about 40 seconds left here, Jeremy. So I would say at this point, we tell everybody thank you and wrap up. And as always, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Jeremy or myself. My email is n.burton@loginvsi.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn. Jeremy, 20 seconds.
Yeah, I'll just thank everyone for joining today. Like I said, the turnout today was truly impressive. And I look forward to our next webinar together. maybe a few months down the road. But please stay tuned to Login VSI and Ferroque for more. But looking forward to bringing more webinars to you guys on the topic. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it, everybody. Have a great rest of your week. Thanks for joining.